The Audi's headlights swept across the circular driveway of the Ashford estate at 7:17 p.m., later than I'd planned. I'd told myself the board meeting at Meridian ran long, which was true, but the real reason I sat in my car for 10 minutes outside the gates was simpler. I was counting to 500 the way Dr. Morrison taught me, one breath per number, 500 breaths to prepare for a night of being invisible. I smoothed down my black Chanel dress, vintage 1990s, purchased at an estate sale for $8,000, but tailored to look like something from Macy's. The trick wasn't wearing expensive things. The trick was wearing expensive things that nobody recognized as expensive. October in Boston meant the maple trees lining Aunt Judith's driveway were at peak color, their leaves burning gold and crimson in the lamplight. Through the tall windows of the Victorian mansion, I could see silhouettes moving, champagne glasses catching light, the annual Parker family reunion in full swing. 40-some people gathered to celebrate wealth, success, and the kind of family legacy that looked perfect in Christmas card photos. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Iris Thornton. Board approved the Q3 acquisitions. You're officially majority shareholder in both companies. Congratulations, boss. I typed back. Don't call me that tonight. Tonight I'm just Chloe. Her response was immediate. You're never just Chloe. But I'll play along. Break a leg. The front door opened before I reached it. Vanessa stood backlit in the entrance, iPhone held at the perfect influencer angle, recording. Family reunion vibes, she narrated to her 340,000 Instagram followers, then spotted me. Her smile sharpened. Oh, wait, there's Cousin Chloe. Fashionably late as always. She added a laughing emoji with her free hand, still filming. I forced my lips into what I hoped looked like a genuine smile. Sorry, Vanessa, work ran late. Still at Meridian? She lowered the phone slightly, but didn't stop recording. I thought you'd have moved up by now. It's been, what, 4 years? 8. The word came out before I could soften it. 8 years this December. Wow. She drew the word out, making it sound like sympathy and judgment in equal measure. Well, you look great. Love this dress. Is it new? Thank you, I said, stepping past her into the marble foyer where I'd spent countless childhood holidays. The house still smelled the same, old wood, expensive candles, and the faint trace of my aunt's gardenias. You look wonderful too. I meant it. Vanessa had her father's height and her mother's bone structure, the kind of genetic lottery that made cameras love her. At 26, she'd built a lifestyle brand around being effortlessly perfect. What her followers didn't see were the 3 assistants, the ring light setup, or the 40 takes it required to capture effortless. The living room buzzed with conversation. I recognized most faces, second cousins, great aunts, family friends who'd known me since I was in braces. Near the fireplace, Blake Ashford held court with a cluster of men in expensive suits, his voice carrying across the room. The key is diversification, he was saying, gesturing with his Scotch glass. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, especially in this market. That's why Ashford Ventures has positioned ourselves across multiple sectors. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Was it surprise? Concern? But it vanished behind his practiced smile. Ah, the Parker underachiever has arrived. He said it loud enough for his audience to hear, light enough to pass as a joke. His companions chuckled politely. Don't worry, Chloe, there's still champagne left. We didn't drink it all before you got here. That's kind of you, Blake. I accepted a glass from a passing server, noting the Veuve Clicquot label. Good champagne, but not great. Blake was economizing, even here. Interesting. He clapped me on the shoulder with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. At 32, Blake Ashford looked like Central Casting's idea of a successful executive. Tall, square-jawed, with just enough gray at his temples to suggest distinguished experience. He'd inherited our grandfather's investment firm 8 years ago and spent every day since trying to convince everyone, maybe especially himself, that he deserved it. Still pushing papers at Thompson Corp? He caught himself. Sorry, Meridian. I always forget they rebranded. They didn't rebrand. The correction slipped out automatically. Meridian acquired Thompson Corp 6 years ago. Different company. Blake blinked. Right, of course. Well, anyway, if you ever want to move into something more substantive, let me know. Ashford Ventures is always looking for good administrative support. I sipped my champagne to hide my expression. Administrative support. If he only knew that the mysterious investor who'd been steadily buying up Ashford Ventures' debt for the past 2 years was standing right in front of him, drinking his champagne and wearing a dress that cost more than his car payment. That's generous, I said quietly. I'll keep it in mind. Across the room, I caught sight of my mother, Catherine Parker, deep in conversation with Aunt Judith. Even at 54, my mother commanded attention, ramrod posture from 20 years practicing law, silver-streaked hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing her signature pearls. She glanced up, met my eyes, and the briefest smile touched her lips before she returned to her conversation. 3 years. 3 years since she'd walked into my real office, the one nobody in this room knew existed, and said, "We need to talk about what you're building and why you're lying to me." 3 years of her running interference, providing legal cover, playing the role of concerned mother while secretly serving as my most trusted advisor. "Chloe!" Sienna Ashford materialized at my elbow, resplendent in a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Blake's younger sister had founded Quantum Wave Technologies 5 years ago and hadn't stopped talking about it since. "Still at Meridian?" She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume, something French and expensive, washing over me. "I thought you'd have advanced by now. What are you? Executive assistant?" Something like that. "Well," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd known Sienna since we were children, back when she was the girl who cried when her science fair volcano didn't work and stayed up all night rebuilding it. That girl was gone now, replaced by someone who wore success like armor. Some people are builders and some people are supporters. Both are important. My therapist's voice echoed in my head. When someone diminishes you, they're usually trying to inflate themselves. The question is, what are they hiding from? Looking at Sienna's too bright smile, her designer dress, the way her hand trembled slightly around her champagne flute, I thought I knew the answer. Quantum Wave Technologies was burning through cash faster than she could raise it, and that Series B funding she kept mentioning, I'd seen the real numbers. She had maybe 4 months before she'd have to start laying people off. "How's the company doing?" I asked. Her smile became radiant, rehearsed. "Incredible! We just closed another round of funding, $12 million from Apex Holdings. They're the biggest player in private equity right now, very selective about their investments." I knew. I'd been the one who approved her funding request, routed through 3 shell companies and a subsidiary investment firm to hide my identity. The $12 million was real, but it came with strings she didn't know about yet. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it more than she could possibly understand. "Apex Holdings, they have quite a reputation. Very mysterious, though." A new voice joined us. Graham Whitfield, my cousin on my father's side, wearing a suit that was expensive but slightly too tight, like he'd gained weight since buying it. At 29, Graham had appointed himself the family's financial guru, despite having no formal training beyond a bachelor's degree in economics. "Nobody knows who runs Apex. They operate entirely through shell companies and private trusts." He turned to me with the expression of someone about to share wisdom with a child. "You see, Chloe, in high-level finance, anonymity is actually a strategy. The most powerful players operate in the shadows, using layered corporate structures to maintain privacy while minimizing tax liability and limiting personal exposure to litigation," I finished. "Yes, I've heard that." Graham's eyebrows rose. "Well, yes, exactly that." He cleared his throat. "Anyway, both Blake and Sienna are meeting with Apex representatives on Monday. Should be quite the coup for the family. Though, between you and me," he lowered his voice conspiratorially, "I think Blake's deal is bigger." "I heard that, Graham." Sienna's voice could have cut glass. "My Series B is $12 million. Blake's being cagey about his numbers, which means they're not as impressive as he wants everyone to think." $15 million. Blake called from across the room, apparently having heard every word. "Apex is investing $15 million in Ashford Ventures. It's already agreed to pending Monday's formalities." I watched them size each other up, two siblings competing for recognition from an investor who was standing right between them, invisible in plain sight. The urge to laugh was almost overwhelming. "Well," Graham said, puffing up slightly, "as family CFO—" "You're not actually the family CFO," Sienna interrupted. "Grandpa gave you $500,000 and called you a financial advisor. There's a difference." Graham's face reddened. "I provide valuable guidance." "Dinner's ready." Aunt Judith's voice, warm and commanding, cut through the tension. "Everyone to the dining room, please." Tit. The dining room table could seat 20, but tonight 16 of us gathered around it, arranged by some invisible hierarchy I'd never quite understood. I found myself between Blake and Graham, directly across from Sienna. My mother sat at one end of the table beside Aunt Judith. Nora Ashford, Blake's wife, sat to his right, one hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. Nora caught my eye and smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd received all evening. The meal began with the usual small talk: property values, stock portfolios, vacation destinations. I let the conversation wash over me, offering neutral responses when directly addressed, otherwise staying quiet. It was a skill I'd perfected over 8 years. How to be present but forgettable, there but not quite seen. "Catherine, your daughter works too hard," Judith said as the main course was served. "She never joins us at the club anymore." "I wish she'd work smarter instead of harder," my mother replied, playing her part perfectly. She looked at me with precisely calibrated concern. "Chloe, honey, you're 28. Have you thought about the management training program at Meridian? They must offer something for advancement." "I'm comfortable where I am, Mom." Blake laughed, the sound just slightly too loud. "Comfortable. That's exactly the problem right there. You should be hungry, Chloe. Ambitious." He gestured with his fork. "Look at Sienna, at me. We're building empires. You're filing papers." "Some people aren't cut out for leadership," Sienna added, cutting her steak with surgical precision. "Not everyone can handle pressure. There's no shame in finding your level." Nora's hand found mine under the table, gave it a quick squeeze. I glanced at her, surprised, but she was looking at her plate. "Speaking of building empires," Graham interjected, "I've been analyzing both your company's growth trajectories, and I have some thoughts." "Our Series B is closing Monday," Sienna interrupted, her voice rising slightly. $12 million from Apex Holdings. That's going to revolutionize our growth trajectory, Graham. We're about to scale in ways you couldn't imagine." "Actually," Blake leaned back in his chair, "Apex is investing $15 million in Ashford Ventures. We're the priority investment." "That's my meeting, Blake." "No, it's mine. Monday morning, 9 a.m. They stared at each other across the table. I noticed Blake's hand trembling slightly as he reached for his wine glass. Noticed the way Sienna's jaw clenched. Noticed that neither of them seemed to find it odd that Apex Holdings had scheduled 2 separate meetings, same day, same time, with cousins who ran competing companies. "Well," my mother said diplomatically, "it sounds like Apex Holdings recognizes talent when they see it. Both of you should be proud." "Speaking of business," Aunt Judith turned to me. "Chloe, dear, have you thought about taking some night classes? Maybe get an MBA? It's not too late to start a real career." The words hit exactly where they were meant to. I counted to 5 in my head, Dr. Morrison's technique for managing reactions. "I'm fine where I am," I said quietly. "That's the problem, Liv." Blake was using the childhood nickname he knew I hated. No ambition, no drive. Grandpa would be— He stopped himself, but we all knew how that sentence ended. Disappointed. Grandpa would be disappointed. My hand went to the small key I wore on a chain around my neck, hidden beneath my dress. The key to 47 Beacon Street, to Winston Parker's old office building, to the empire I'd built in secret while they all watched me and saw nothing. I think Grandpa understood me better than you know," I said softly. Blake opened his mouth to respond, but Nora leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Blake, honey, your Uncle Winston was a brilliant man. I'm sure he had his reasons for everything he did." The table fell into an awkward silence. I glanced at Nora again, really looked at her this time. She was 33, had met Blake 5 years ago at a charity fundraiser, and married him in a ceremony that cost more than some people's houses. But tonight, in the candlelight, I saw the dark circles under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. Saw the way she rubbed her lower back when she thought nobody was watching. Saw the worry that flickered across her face when Blake mentioned money. And I realized she knew. Maybe not everything, but she knew Blake's company was in trouble. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of passive-aggressive compliments and competitive achievements. Vanessa talked about her Instagram collaborations with luxury brands, carefully not mentioning that most of them were unpaid partnerships. Graham expounded on cryptocurrency investments, not mentioning that he'd lost nearly $200,000 in NFT schemes. Sienna described Quantum Wave's revolutionary technology without mentioning that they'd missed payroll twice in the last 6 months, covered only by emergency funding from their mysterious investor. By the time dessert arrived, I had counted to 5,000. My jaw ached from forced smiling, and my phone had buzzed 3 times in my purse. I excused myself under the pretense of needing air and slipped out to the garden. The October night was cool, sharp with the smell of dying leaves. I pulled out my phone. 3 texts, all from Iris. Blake hired a PI. Stonebridge Investigations. They're digging into Apex Holdings' ownership structure. Chloe, they're good. They found the first layer. Call me. My heart began to pound. I called her immediately. How close are they? I asked without preamble. 3 layers away from your name, Iris said. Maybe 72 hours. Blake's PI is thorough, and Blake's desperate. Desperate people pay for rush jobs. I closed my eyes, doing the math. Monday's meeting was 40 hours away. If the PI worked through the weekend... Chloe, what do you want to do? I don't know yet. Let me... Chloe? I spun around. Nora stood in the garden doorway, backlit from the house, one hand supporting her belly. I have to go, I told Iris. I'll call you back. Nora walked toward me carefully, the way women in their 3rd trimester do, each step considered. She stopped a few feet away. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to interrupt. I saw you leave and Can we talk? Privately? I studied her face in the dim light from the house. Whatever she wanted to say, it wasn't casual conversation. Of course, I said, gesturing to the bench beneath the oak tree. Are you okay? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's what I came to ask you. We sat in silence for a moment, the party noise a distant murmur behind us. I know what you must think of us, Nora said finally. Of Blake especially. The way he talks to you, it's... She stopped, shook her head. I don't know how to say this without sounding... Just say it. She turned to face me fully. Blake's company is failing. We're broke. The baby is due in 8 weeks, and I don't know if we'll have health insurance. He remortgaged our house 6 months ago and didn't tell me until last week. Her voice cracked. And still, he can't stop himself from treating you like you're less than him. I'm ashamed of my husband, Chloe. I'm ashamed, and I'm scared, and I don't know what to do. My carefully constructed walls cracked. This was the truth I'd been seeking, confirmation that behind all the posturing they were human. Scared. Struggling. Why are you telling me this? I asked softly. Because you're the only one who seems real. Everyone else is performing, but you... She gestured at me, at my simple dress, my modest car parked among the Mercedes and BMWs. You're not pretending to be anything you're not, and I thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to feel like you don't belong. Oh, Nora, I thought, if you only knew. This meeting on Monday, she continued, with Apex Holdings, it's Blake's last hope. If they don't invest, we lose everything. The company, the house, maybe even... She placed both hands on her belly. I need to know my baby will be okay. I sat there looking at this woman who'd shown me more genuine kindness in 5 minutes than my family had in years, and felt something I hadn't expected. Guilt. Nora, I started, but she shook her head. You don't have to say anything. I just needed to tell someone, and you're kind. I can see it even if they can't. She stood carefully, using the bench arm for support. I should get back before Blake wonders where I am. Thank you for listening. I watched her walk back to the house, her gait uneven, her hand never leaving her belly. And I thought about the meeting on Monday, about the moment when Blake would learn that his mysterious savior was the cousin he'd spent 8 years belittling, about how Nora would be in that room, about the baby girl. I'd seen the ultrasound photo in Blake's office file, who deserved better than to be born into bankruptcy and shame, about the choice I thought I'd already made, and how maybe I'd been wrong. My phone buzzed again. Harrison Wolfe, my grandfather's lawyer. Need to see you tomorrow. Sunday. My office, 8 a.m. It's about Winston's will. There's a clause you don't know about. I stared at the message, my mind racing. A clause I didn't know about. 8 years after the reading. What had my grandfather planned that I'd missed? I looked back at the house, at the golden windows full of people who thought they knew me, thought they knew what mattered, thought they understood power and success and legacy. Tomorrow, I would learn something that might change everything. Tonight, I just wanted to go home. I sent one text to Iris, clear my calendar for tomorrow morning. Then I walked back inside, said my goodbyes, and drove my modest Audi back to the penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor that nobody in my family knew I owned. And I tried not to think about Nora's worried eyes, or Blake's trembling hands, or the empire I'd built on the foundation of their failures. Tried and failed. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of gray October sky that promised rain by afternoon. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, my mind spinning through scenarios, calculations, contingencies. At 7:45 a.m., I stood outside Harrison Wolfe's office building in downtown Boston, watching early morning joggers pass by, their breath fogging in the cold air. Harrison had been my grandfather's lawyer for 40 years, the man who'd read Winston's will 8 years ago, who'd helped me navigate the complex property transfers that followed, who'd set up the initial shell companies that became Apex Holdings. If anyone knew my grandfather's mind, it was Harrison. The building was empty on Sunday, but he'd given me the security code. I took the elevator to the 12th floor, found his office door unlocked, warm light spilling into the hallway. Chloe. Harrison stood as I entered, a tall man in his 60s with steel gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and judged nothing. Coffee? Please. He poured from a French press, Harrison's one concession to modernity in an office that looked like it hadn't changed since 1985. Heavy wooden furniture, leather-bound law books, a photograph of him shaking hands with Winston at some long-ago charity event. You said there's a clause I don't know about, I said, accepting the cup. In Grandpa's will. There is. He settled into his chair, steepled his fingers. Winston left specific instructions. The clause was to be revealed only under 2 conditions, either 8 years after his death, or if you requested it. Tomorrow marks 8 years. My heart was pounding. What does it say? Instead of answering, Harrison reached into his desk and pulled out an envelope. Heavy cream paper sealed with red wax, my grandfather's style exactly, my name in his distinctive handwriting. Before you open that, Harrison said quietly, I need to tell you something. Winston came to see me 6 months before he died. He knew his time was limited. The cancer had spread by then, and he told me something I've never shared with anyone. I waited. He said, Harrison, I'm going to give my grandchildren a test. Blake will get what looks like power. Sienna will get what looks like opportunity. Graham will get what looks like authority. Vanessa will get what looks like freedom. But Chloe will get what looks like nothing, and that's how I'll know which one truly understands. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Play this alone or with Harrison. Your choice. I'll step out, Harrison offered. No, stay, please. He nodded and turned his monitor so we could both see. I plugged in the drive. My grandfather's face filled the screen. He looked younger than I remembered, which meant this was recorded before the cancer took hold. He was sitting in his office at 47 Beacon Street, the same office that was now mine. Chloe, the recording began, and hearing his voice again after 8 years made my throat tighten. If you're watching this, you've either figured it out or you're about to make a terrible mistake. He leaned forward, his eyes, so like mine, intense with purpose. The will was never about the money. It was about character. I gave each grandchild what they valued most. Blake valued status, so I gave him a company with a prestigious name. Sienna valued innovation, so I gave her capital to build. Graham valued authority, so I gave him a title. Vanessa valued freedom, so I gave her money. But you, Chloe, you valued understanding, so I gave you a puzzle. On screen, he smiled that knowing smile I remembered so well. By now, if you're the granddaughter I think you are, you've turned that worthless building into something remarkable. You've probably discovered the property rights, the development potential, the strategic position in Boston's growth corridor. You've built carefully, quietly, without drawing attention. And his smile widened. If I know you at all, you've probably acquired significant stakes in your cousin's companies, maybe even controlling stakes. I felt Harrison's eyes on me, but I couldn't look away from the screen. Here's the test, Chloe. The real one. What do you do with that power? Winston's expression grew serious. I've written a contingency clause into my will. If, within 8 years of my death, you acquire majority control of 2 or more family business ventures, you must make a choice. Harrison has the legal documents, but the choice is this. Option A, keep everything. Maintain control. Prove you're the smartest, most capable person in the family. But if you choose this, you forfeit something I've set aside for you, a trust worth $50 million. More importantly, you forfeit the thing I value most, proof that you learned wisdom, not just power. Option B, use your position to help, not humiliate. I've designed a restructuring framework with Harrison. It allows you to maintain your empire while creating accountability and support for your cousin's ventures. Choose this, and the $50 million trust becomes yours. But there's more in that trust than money, Chloe. There are shares, controlling shares, in Meridian Corporation. I inhaled sharply. Meridian Corporation, the company where I supposedly worked as an executive assistant. A company worth over $200 million. If you choose option B, Winston continued, you'd control Meridian publicly. No more hiding, no more pretending. You'd step into your full power, but you'd do it by lifting others up, not tearing them down. He leaned back, and for a moment, he just looked at me through the screen, across the years, across death itself. I taught you to build an empire, Chloe. But your mother, Catherine, she taught you something I was too proud to learn until late in life. She taught you compassion. The question is, which lesson matters more? The video ended. I sat in silence, coffee forgotten, my world tilting on its axis. He knew, I whispered. He knew exactly what I'd do, what I'd become. He hoped, Harrison corrected gently. He hoped you'd be smart enough to build an empire, and he hoped you'd be wise enough to know what to do with it. He slid a folder across his desk. These are the Option B documents, a framework for restructuring your cousin's companies under your guidance, with accountability measures, financial controls, and pathways to actual sustainability. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Page after page of legal structures, financial frameworks, governance models. My grandfather had thought of everything. How long do I have to decide? The clause activates tomorrow. You have until the end of business day Monday to make your choice. Monday. The day I was supposed to reveal myself to Blake and Sienna. The day everything was supposed to come together exactly as I'd planned. My phone buzzed, a text from Iris. The PI found Layer 2. They're moving faster than expected. Maybe 48 hours to your name, not 72. I showed Harrison the message. Then you may not have until Monday evening, he said. If Blake discovers the truth before you reveal it, you lose control of the narrative. And option A becomes moot anyway, I realized. If he exposes me, there's no power in the reveal. Just embarrassment. So what are you going to do? I thought about Nora's worried face, about Blake's trembling hands, about Sienna's too bright smile hiding desperation, about 8 years of building toward this moment, this revenge, this proof that I was better than all of them. And I thought about my grandfather's face on that screen, asking me what mattered more, being right or being good. I don't know, I admitted. I need to think. I drove aimlessly for an hour, the city scrolling past my windows. Finally, I ended up at my penthouse, pacing the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Boston Harbor. My phone rang. Catherine. Harrison called me, she said without preamble. He told me about the video. Did you know? About the contingency clause? A pause. I suspected. Your grandfather and I talked before he died. He asked me what kind of person you were becoming. I told him you were brilliant, driven, and angry. He said, good. She'll need the anger to build, but she'll need to let it go to lead. I sank onto my couch. Mom, I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You're just afraid of it. I spent 8 years proving you're smarter than people who love you but don't know how to show it, she interrupted. I know, I watched. And Chloe, I'm going to tell you something I should have said years ago. I'm sorry. I blinked. What? I'm sorry I let you feel invisible. Sorry I joined them in dismissing you. Sorry I didn't see what you were building until you showed me. You deserved better from your mother. Tears stung my eyes. You've been helping me for 3 years. I've been enabling you for 3 years, she corrected. Helping you build the mechanism for revenge. But your grandfather's test isn't about the mechanism, honey. It's about what you do with it. Blake hired a PI. They're going to find out anyway. Then you tell them first, on your terms, but you decide what kind of person you want to be when you do it. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness watching boats move across the harbor. My phone buzzed again. This time Iris. Need to talk. Now. It's urgent. I called her back. What is it? I've been digging into Blake's PI firm, Stonebridge. They're good, but they're also expensive. Blake paid them $50,000 on Friday. Chloe, he doesn't have $50,000. He borrowed it. From who? From Sienna. I sat up straight. What? I found the wire transfer. Sienna loaned Blake $50,000 3 days ago. The note said, to find the truth about Apex. We're in this together. My cousins were working together. For the first time in years, maybe ever, Blake and Sienna were united, against me. Except they didn't know it was me yet. There's more, Iris said. I hacked the PI's email, don't ask me how. They're planning to present their findings to Blake and Sienna together, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., the same time as the supposed Apex Holdings meeting. They're going to ambush me, I realized. Or you ambush them first, Iris said. Chloe, what do you want to do? We can still pivot, we can… Call everyone, I interrupted. Blake, Sienna, Graham, Vanessa, my mother, Aunt Judith. Tell them there's an emergency family meeting, tonight, 6 p.m., my office. Your office? Chloe, they don't know. They will. It's time. Check. At 5:45 p.m., I stood in my office on the 8th floor of 47 Beacon Street watching the sunset over Boston. The space looked exactly as I'd designed it 8 years ago. Sleek, modern, powerful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a conference table that could seat 12, screens built into the walls showing real-time data from all my holdings. Iris arrived first, dressed in a sharp suit, carrying her laptop. The board members are standing by, she said. If you need them. I won't. This isn't a business meeting. It's family. She squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Ask me again in an hour. They began arriving at 5:55. I watched from my office as they entered the building's lobby, their faces confused, curious, some annoyed at the Sunday evening summons. Blake and Nora came together, Blake looking rumpled and stressed. Sienna arrived in workout clothes, hair in a ponytail. I'd pulled her from a Sunday yoga class. Graham showed up in a suit, always needing to look professional. Vanessa, for once, wasn't filming. Catherine and Judith were last, both wearing expressions I couldn't read. At exactly 6 p.m., Iris led them to the elevator. I heard it rise, heard the doors open on the 8th floor, heard their footsteps in the hallway. The conference room door opened. Blake entered first, stopped dead. What the hell is this place? The others filed in behind him, taking in the space, the screens, the data, the unmistakable signs of serious money and serious power. Chloe? Sienna's voice was small, uncertain. What's going on? I stood from my position by the windows and turned to face them. I'd changed from my casual morning clothes into a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than everything they'd seen me wear in the past 8 years combined. My hair was up, makeup professionally done. For the first time in their presence, I looked like what I actually was, a CEO. "This is Apex Holdings," I said quietly. "Welcome to my office." The silence was absolute. Graham laughed first, a nervous, disbelieving sound. "This is a joke, some kind of—" "Iris?" I nodded to my assistant. The wall screens came to life. Apex Holdings, corporate structure. Founded October 15, 2017. Current assets, $180,000. CEO and founder, Chloe Parker. More screens lit up, showing the web of companies, the timeline of acquisitions, the strategic investments, and there, highlighted in red, Ashford Ventures, 67% ownership. Quantum Wave Technologies, 51% ownership. Blake's face went white. Sienna grabbed the conference table for support. "You," Blake whispered. "You're Apex Holdings?" "I am Apex Holdings." "But you're a secretary. You're—" He couldn't finish the sentence. I pulled up another screen. "The building you thought was worthless? Grandpa left me property rights, mineral claims, and development potential worth $8 million. I turned it into this." I gestured around us. "While you were all busy looking successful, I was busy being successful." Sienna's voice shook. "You've owned my company for 2 years?" 23 months. I started buying shares when you needed Series A funding. The investor who saved you, Elijah Sterling, he was representing me. "The $12 million we just raised?" Her eyes widened. "That was you?" "That was me keeping your company alive long enough for this conversation." Blake was frantically scrolling through his phone, fact-checking, his hands trembling. Nora sat down heavily, one hand on her belly, her face pale. "Blake," I said quietly, "you borrowed $50,000 from Sienna to hire a PI to investigate me. I know because I've been monitoring Stonebridge investigations. They were going to tell you tomorrow morning that Apex Holdings is run by your cousin. I decided you should hear it from me first." He looked up, and for the first time in 8 years, I saw my cousin without the armor. Scared, ashamed, defeated. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this? Let us think you were nothing while you were this." And there it was. The question I'd known was coming. The question I'd spent 3 hours with Dr. Morrison preparing to answer. I could tell them about the years of dismissal, the condescending comments, the way they made me feel small and worthless and invisible. I could make them feel the weight of every insult, every slight, every moment they chose not to see me. I could win this argument, or I could tell them the truth. "Because," I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts, "I wanted one person, just one, to see me without the money, to ask if I was okay, to care about me for me, not for what I could do for them." I looked at Nora. "You asked. Last night. You were the only one." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't bother to hide them. I spent 8 years building an empire to prove I was worth seeing, and the saddest part is I built it while watching all of you drown. Blake, you've been failing for 3 years. Sienna, your company should have died 18 months ago. Graham, you've lost almost $200,000 in bad investments, and every Sunday, I sat at that dinner table watching you pretend everything was perfect while you were all falling apart. My voice rose. You want to know why I didn't tell you? Because I wanted someone, anyone, to defend me, to see me, to love me without needing a reason. Silence. Then Aunt Judith spoke, her voice gentle. "Oh, Chloe, we did see you. We just saw the wrong things." Catherine stepped forward, placed her hand on my shoulder. "I think," she said to the room, "it's time everyone knew the truth. All of it." She looked at me and I nodded. "I've known about Apex Holdings for 3 years," Catherine said. "I've been helping Chloe build it. And before anyone asks why, it's because my daughter needed someone in her corner and I failed her for too long before I finally stepped up." More silence. Then Blake sank into a chair, head in his hands. "We're losing everything," he said quietly. "The company, the house. The baby is coming in 8 weeks, and we're—" His voice broke. "We're broke." Nora was crying now too, silent tears running down her face. Sienna sat down beside him. "I have 47 employees. I can't make payroll in 10 days. That 12 million from Chloe, that's the only thing keeping the lights on." Graham, for once, had nothing to say. He just stood there, looking at the screens showing my empire, his face ashen. And Vanessa, sweet, shallow Vanessa, surprised me. "I deleted my Instagram account this morning," she said quietly. 340,000 followers. I woke up, looked at myself in my phone, and realized I didn't know who I was without the camera, without the likes. She looked at me. "You knew who you were, even when we couldn't see it." I took a shaky breath. "Harrison Wolfe asked me to come to his office this morning. Grandpa left a contingency clause in his will. A test." I explained the video, option A and option B, the $50 million trust, the Meridian Corporation shares. "So you have to choose," Blake said dully. "Keep our companies and prove you're smarter than us, or give them back and get even richer." "No," I said. "Those were Grandpa's options, but I found a third one." I pulled out the documents I'd spent the afternoon preparing with Harrison and Iris. "The Parker Family Enterprise Trust. We restructure everything, all your companies, my holdings, everything, into one entity. Equal ownership distributed among all of us. Catherine, Judith, you too. We become partners. Real partners." I slid the summary sheet across the table. "We vote on major decisions. We are transparent about finances. We help each other actually succeed, not just look successful. And yes, I'll serve as CEO, but it's a voted position. 2-year terms. If you don't think I'm doing right by the family, you can replace me." They stared at the documents. "Why would you do this?" Sienna asked. "You earned this. You don't owe us anything." I thought about my grandfather's face on that video screen, about Nora's kindness, about 8 years of anger and loneliness, and proving myself to people who weren't looking. "Because," I said, "Grandpa's last lesson wasn't about building an empire. It was about what you do with one. And I can either be the smartest person in this room, or I can be part of something bigger than me." I met each of their eyes in turn. "I choose bigger." The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. They were all staring at the documents I'd laid out, the framework for a future none of them had imagined. Blake spoke first. He stood slowly, walked to the windows overlooking Boston, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. 8 years, he said, his back to us. 8 years I spent trying to prove I deserved Grandpa's company, trying to be him. And the whole time, I was running it into the ground. He turned, and his eyes were red. "I remortgaged our house, Chloe. I took out personal loans. I made increasingly desperate investments trying to cover the losses. And every Sunday, I sat at that table and made you feel small because it made me feel big." He crossed the room, stood in front of me. "I'm sorry for every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every time I made you invisible because I was terrified people would see through me." His voice cracked. "You're not just smarter than me. You're better than me. And I don't deserve this second chance." Nora stood, took his hand. "But you'll take it," she said firmly. "And you'll spend the rest of your life earning it. Right?" Blake nodded, unable to speak. Sienna was next. She stood on shaking legs, clutching the document. "I need to say something." She looked around the room. "I've been in therapy for 2 years, twice a week, every week, because I couldn't understand why I was so miserable while succeeding. My therapist kept asking who I was trying to impress." She looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, the chair that should have been Winston's. "Grandpa, I was trying to impress a man who's been dead for 8 years, and in doing that I became someone he'd be ashamed of." Her voice broke. "Someone who tears others down to feel tall. Someone who built a company on ego instead of substance." She turned to me. "I have 47 employees, Chloe. 47 people with families, mortgages, dreams, and I almost destroyed their livelihoods because I was too proud to admit I didn't know what I was doing. Tears streamed down her face. I don't deserve this, but they do. So if you're offering a second chance, I'll take it. Not for me. For them. Graham sat down heavily, for once without his practiced confidence. I called myself the family CFO, he said quietly. Gave advice, acted like an expert. The truth is, I've been faking it since Dad died. I was 16 when he had the accident, and I've spent 13 years pretending to be him, pretending to understand things I don't, making investments I don't comprehend because admitting ignorance felt like admitting I wasn't worthy of the name Whitfield. He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. I lost almost $200,000 in cryptocurrency and NFT schemes. Money Grandpa left me to build something real. And instead of asking for help, I doubled down, gave other people advice, acted like I knew what I was doing. He laughed bitterly. I'm a fraud, Chloe. And you saw through me from day one, didn't you? I saw someone trying too hard to be something he thought he should be, I said gently. That's not fraud. That's grief. Vanessa surprised me again. She stood, and for once, she wasn't performing. No perfect posture, no influencer smile. I'm 26 years old, and until this morning, I couldn't tell you one thing I believed in that wasn't sponsored content. Her voice was small. I built a brand around being perfect, effortless, happy. 340,000 people watched me live a life that didn't exist. And the worst part? I started to believe it too. She pulled out her phone, showed us the screen. Her Instagram account was gone. I deleted it at 6 a.m. this morning, sat in my apartment for 3 hours trying to figure out who Vanessa Reed was without the camera, without the filters, without the performance. She looked at me. You knew who you were even when we couldn't see it, even when we made you feel like you were nothing. That's not just smart, Chloe. That's brave. Catherine stepped forward, placed her hand on my shoulder. I need to apologize too. As your mother, I should have seen what was happening, should have protected you from their dismissal, should have asked years ago why my brilliant daughter was working 80-hour weeks at a job that supposedly went nowhere. You did protect me, I said. For 3 years, you've been— I enabled you, she interrupted. I helped you build the mechanism for revenge. But your grandfather's test wasn't about the mechanism. It was about what you do with it, and I should have asked you that question 3 years ago. Aunt Judith spoke last. She'd been quiet through all of this, watching with the careful attention of someone who'd raised 2 children and buried 1 brother. Winston would be proud, she said softly. Not of the empire you built, Chloe, though that's remarkable. He'd be proud of this moment. Of the choice you're making. She looked around the room. All of you, you're finally being honest, finally being real. That's what he wanted. A family that could be vulnerable with each other. She stood, walked to the documents, picked one up. I vote yes, to the trust, to the partnership, to finally being the family we pretended to be. I distributed ballots, simple paper, handwritten questions. Harrison had prepared them this morning, though I'd modified them this afternoon. This only works if everyone chooses it, I said. So, we vote. Now. The question is simple. Yes to Parker Family Enterprise Trust, equal partnership, shared responsibility. Or no, maintain current structure. I keep control. We continue as we are. It needs to be unanimous, Harrison said from his position by the door. 1 no vote, and we maintain status quo. They wrote in silence. I watched their faces. Blake's jaw clenched, Sienna biting her lip, Graham's hand trembling, Vanessa taking her time, Catherine and Judith conferring with their eyes. One by one, they folded their ballots and placed them in the box Harrison provided. I voted last, placed my folded paper on top of the others. Harrison counted. The room held its breath. 7 ballots, he said. 7 votes. He looked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, Harrison Wolfe smiled. 7, yes? The room exhaled collectively. Nora started crying, happy tears this time. Sienna laughed, a sound of pure relief. Graham slumped in his chair, looking lighter than I'd seen him in years. When do we start? Blake asked, his voice thick with emotion. Tomorrow, I said. 9 a.m., this office. We have companies to rebuild, structures to create, and a lot of hard work ahead of us. Will it work? Vanessa asked. Really? I thought about my answer carefully. If we're honest with each other, if we do the work, if we remember that this is about building something sustainable, not something that looks good on Instagram, I smiled at her. Then yes, it'll work. Kev. After the others left, Catherine stayed behind. We stood at the windows, watching the city lights reflect off the harbor. You gave up sole control, she said. That's not what your grandfather expected. No, I agreed. It's better than what he expected. He taught me to build an empire, but you taught me something else. What's that? That being alone at the top isn't strength. It's loneliness. I turned to face her. You spent 3 years as my silent partner when you could have claimed credit, could have told the family, taken the spotlight. Instead, you stood beside me in the shadows. That's real power, Mom. That's what I want to be. She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself be her daughter. Not a CEO, not a billionaire, just Chloe. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. In the elevator down, Blake and Nora rode in silence. When they reached the ground floor, Nora spoke. You did the right thing. I voted yes because I was terrified to vote no, Blake admitted. That's not courage. Maybe not, Nora said, taking his hand. But showing up tomorrow will be, and the day after, and every day after that. That's where courage lives, in the mundane choice to keep trying. Sienna sat in her car for 20 minutes before starting the engine. Then she called her therapist's emergency line. Dr. Reeves, it's Sienna. I know it's Sunday night, but I needed to tell you. I have a family again, and this time, I'm going to deserve them. Hey. 6 months later, the office looked different. The Parker Family Enterprise Trust nameplate gleamed on the door. The conference table, once long and hierarchical, had been replaced with a round one, King Arthur style, as Vanessa had joked. Blake sat at a desk in the corner taking notes during a Yale Executive Management webinar. He'd enrolled in a 2-year program, attending classes remotely while working. Beside him, a photo of baby Clara Winston Ashford, born healthy in December, slept peacefully. Sienna presented quarterly results to the group gathered around the table. First profitable quarter, she announced, and the room erupted in applause. We're not just surviving anymore, we're actually building something. Graham worked alongside a real financial advisor, someone Chloe had hired to mentor him. For the first time in his life, he was learning instead of pretending to know. Vanessa, dressed in jeans and a blazer, no phone in sight, analyzed market data on her laptop. She'd enrolled at Boston University studying business. Her presentation on millennial consumer trends had been so good, Sienna hired her as a consultant for Quantum Wave. And at the head of the table, though really, a round table had no head, I sat watching my family work together. Really work. No performance, no pretense. My phone buzzed. Harrison Wolf. The Meridian shares transferred this morning. Congratulations on becoming public. Today was the day the business world would learn that Chloe Parker, formerly just an assistant, was now the majority shareholder and CEO of Meridian Corporation. Tomorrow, the press would have questions. Competitors would adjust their strategies. The family's story would become public. But tonight was Thanksgiving, and we were gathering at Judith's house. The same dining room, but different energy. Later, I stood at Winston's grave alone, placing flowers on the headstone. You were right, Grandpa, I said quietly. Power is worthless without purpose. Wealth is empty without family. Success is hollow without people to share it with. I touched the key I still wore around my neck, though it now opened an office full of people instead of secrets. I built the empire you taught me to build, but then I did something you didn't expect. I shared it, because the best legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's who you bring with you. Footsteps behind me, Catherine joined me at the grave. Ready for dinner? She asked. Almost. I looked at my grandfather's name etched in granite. Do you think he'd be proud? I think, Catherine said, linking her arm through mine. He'd say you finally learned the last lesson, the one he spent 60 years learning himself. What's that? That the quiet empire isn't the one nobody knows about. It's the one built on foundations strong enough to share. We walked back to the car together, mother and daughter, partners in truth now, heading toward a table full of people who finally saw me, and who I finally saw in return. Not perfect, not fixed, but real.